Welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets, the place where whispers turn into stories and hidden threads finally weave into a picture you can't stop staring at. Today, we're stepping into the quiet storm that has everyone talking, but no one truly understands, because we're diving into the world of Barış Baktaş and Yağmur Yüksel. The headline practically introduces itself. Secrets revealed, a love that still catches us off guard, and a pair of stars who learned how to shine together without blinding us with overexposure. If you adore twists, hush-hush timelines, and romances that feel like they escaped from a screenplay, settle in, because this is the one you've been waiting for. Before we spill what's been gathering under the surface, here's your gentle reminder. If you haven't already joined the Turkish Spotlight Secrets family, do it now and tap the bell so you're the first to know when a new thread pulls loose. Because the story of Barış and Yağmur deserves uninterrupted attention. Let's start at the beginning, or at least the beginning the public believes it knows. Barış Baktaş, the actor whose eyes can carry a scene before a single line is spoken, has been the quiet thunder of primetime. He's moved from brooding heartbreakers to brave everyman with an ease that makes casting directors breathe easier. His way of sinking into layered roles earned him not just applause, but a kind of trust from viewers who think, if Barış is in it, I'll watch. Across the aisle stands Yağmur Yüksel, a voice that feels both sunrise and storm, an artist who found a lane that doesn't just echo trends, it bends them. She sings like a confidant, writes like a diarist, and performs like she's inviting you into a secret you can't wait to keep. Together, they became the rumor that grew legs and learned to dance. Their chemistry traveled ahead of them, arriving at events before they did, stirring phones to life, triggering those blurry photos that say everything and nothing at once. A glance here. A laugh that lingered a beat too long there. Words in interviews that felt carefully chosen and yet strangely revealing. And while speculation galloped, they walked. Calmly. As if the world's curiosity were a distant wave. How did two people so closely watched manage to build a sanctuary where cameras couldn't follow? That's where the mystery begins, and today, we trace the edges. We spoke with people who've stood just outside the circle, who noticed when an assistant redirected a path, when a driver waited with the engine off so the two could finish a quiet conversation, when a schedule shifted for reasons no one put in writing. What we found wasn't a gimmick or a tidy PR plan. It was a pact. It was two careers promising to make room for a private life that needed to grow without applause. If you rewind to those first murmurs, the signs were almost laughably small. A meeting in a studio corridor that should have been ordinary. A rehearsal that ran, conveniently, a little over. A charity event where they posed together but left separately, and yet, somehow, arrived at the next stop within minutes of each other. At first, most fans shrugged. It was the kind of coincidence that fuels cafes and comment sections but burns out before closing time. Only, it didn't burn out. It smoldered. And in that warm, steady glow, their story found protection. What changed? Some will tell you there was a night, quiet, unglamorous, when the truth slipped through. Not a red carpet, not a flashy dinner, but a late exit through a side door after a recording session. The air was tired. The city was in that soft half-sleep that comes after midnight. And someone's camera caught not a kiss, not an embrace, but a look. A look that carries the weight of 1,000 words. Fans zoomed in. Detractors dismissed it. But for those who know how real moments hide, it was more than enough to start believing. Here's what sets Barış and Yağmur apart: they didn't deny a heartbeat they couldn't control, and they didn't feed a machine they couldn't trust. Instead, they treated their connection like a fragile flame cupped against the wind. They chose their moments. They learned which spaces held them gently. They practiced the art, rare, maddening to tabloids, of letting the world wonder without handing it a script. Before anything felt official, there were stretches of uncertainty. Friends noticed days when they were magnets and days when they kept a respectful distance, as if testing whether what drew them close could survive the spotlight's heat. Was it strategy? Maybe in part. But more than that, it was two people figuring out if their private language could withstand public noise. At times their conversation stretched into silence and, in those silences, understanding ripened. Then came bursts of energy, the kind that leaves no doubt in a room that the spark is not an accident. About those secrets everyone keeps asking about, picture a first meeting that's been summarized before, but not like this. Think less about a staged introduction and more about an in-between moment no one planned. A rehearsed duet that was meant to be polite professionalism and turned into an exchange of glances that both recognized as oddly familiar. The joke that wasn't very funny but somehow opened a door. The shared sense that the room had shifted even if the furniture stayed the same. No roses showered from the ceiling. No orchestra swelled. Just a heartbeat that finally heard an echo. Whispers say there were challenges lining their path, timelines that didn't align, projects hungry for attention, expectations that tugged them in opposite directions. Yet the obstacles didn't break the thread, they wove texture into it. Early on, there was a week where they barely spoke, not from drama, but from caution. A week to breathe. A week to ask, is this a story we can live in, or are we writing something we'll later erase? By the time they looked up again, the answer was noticeable in how gently they resumed, in how much calmer their laughter sounded. The part that surprises most isn't fireworks, it's steadiness. Love in their world often arrives with neon lights and leaves with a headline. But there seems to prefer soft lamps and closed doors. The grand gesture, in their case, was not a public declaration, it was the discipline not to make one. Instead, they built a rhythm out of small rituals, the message sent at wrap, the dinner delivered to a studio when the day ran long, the unposted photos that live in a folder only they open. Pressure melts when you're not performing for the pressure. When people ask how they held the line, the clue is in how they talk about work. They respect the grind. They respect the craft. And they respect each other's private corners. No one in their circle will tell you they're perfect, they'll tell you they're patient. They carve the difference between attention and intention. If you ever saw them at a crowded premiere, you might have noticed how they orbit, close enough to feel, far enough to breathe. That's not distance, that's trust. Has their connection shaped their paths? Absolutely. Attention can be a burden or a battery. In their case, it became a charge. For Barış, scripts with heavier emotional weight started to look less like risks and more like invitations. He said yes to roles that required him to leave a piece of himself on the floor, because he knew someone would help him pick it up afterward. For Yağmur, the stage blossomed into a confession booth, more raw edges, more truth-telling, more nights where the crowd didn't just sing along, they exhaled with her. The glow around them wasn't a spotlight. It was a reflection. Of course, none of this insulated them from criticism. There were comparisons to past relationships, silly scorecards tabulating who posted whom, who liked what, who unfollowed which designer and why. The background noise did what background noise does, it buzzed. But a curious thing kept happening. When the chatter rose, their output deepened. It's as if the noise became proof of life, and they decided to answer not with explanations, but with work that made explanations unnecessary. In private, the two created a boundary that feels almost old-fashioned in an era that measures love in metrics. They decided that their most valuable currency would be what they kept to themselves. That's why the story of how they truly met still belongs more to them than to us. That's why we're left stitching together timelines with details that are, at best, approximations. And maybe that's the point. Maybe love survives the longest when the loudest parts of it are the ones you can't hear. What about their low points? Every couple has them, and no spotlight softens those edges. There was a month when his call time became a sunrise and her studio sessions spilled past midnight, when time zones inside the same city kept them apart. They learned to send their presents in pieces, voice notes recorded in a car, a sweater left behind on purpose, a book with a dried jasmine tucked inside. When a small misunderstanding threatened to grow fangs, something about a headline interpreted the wrong way, they paused instead of pouncing. That was their rule. If there's one rule that holds them together, it's the decision to slow down when the world speeds up. And then came the moment that made even the skeptics lean in. The way they anchored each other during a particularly tough career week. Papers turned a creative disagreement on a set into a scandal. Social feeds spun. But instead of lashing out, they retreated into the only audience that mattered, each other. And the next time they appeared at the same event, there was a stillness about them that told a story more convincingly than a statement ever could. The crowd felt it. The cameras captured it. Even the headlines softened. If you want to reduce it to a formula, here it is: honest talk, agreed boundaries, fierce respect. They don't pretend life off camera is prettier than it is. They just don't audition for approval. Perhaps that's why their romance surprises, because it seems to be built for endurance, not applause. The intensity of their beginning didn't burn them out, it illuminated the path. And step by step, they've walked it, refusing to trip over the spotlight's wires. So where does this leave us? With a love story that thrives on nuance. With two artists who became each other's quiet room. With careers that didn't swallow the romance but fed it. The secrets revealed today aren't scandals, they're the small coordinates of a map: how a glance outlived a rumor, how a promise fit into a calendar, how two lives decided that privacy is not the opposite of passion, it's the home where passion sleeps. Tell us. What surprised you most about the way Barış Baktaş and Yağmur Yüksel have carried this? Was it the restraint? The timing? The refusal to turn every heartbeat into content? Talk to us below, your thoughts add color to this canvas, and your questions keep the conversation brave. If you felt the pull of this story, light up that like button. Share this with a friend who swears they're done believing in celebrity love until a story like this comes along. And if you're new here, press subscribe, ring the bell, and keep your seat warm at Turkish Spotlight Secrets. The next chapter is closer than you think, and we'll be right here when the curtain moves again. Until then, remember, the loudest secrets are often the ones told in whispers, the strongest love is the kind that doesn't need proving, and the best stories are the ones that keep teaching you how to listen.